Welcome to the Service to Syndication Podcast, where we interview the biggest and most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, capital raisers in the world who have worn the uniform of this great country, those who provide services to our men and women in uniform, and other service-oriented professionals to provide you with the tool sets, the mindsets, and the skill sets to help you conquer your dreams and goals in real estate and to use this wealth creation vehicle so you can live a more successful, happy, and fulfilled life of generosity and prosperity. If what you desire is time, lifestyle, and financial freedom, you've come to the right place. We will bring to you the best real estate entrepreneurs who will give you the insights, the knowledge, experience, skills, so you can go out and crush it in whatever real estate asset class you desire. So grab a pencil and paper, sit back, and enjoy the ride on the Service to Syndication Podcast. Hello, my servicemen and women and other service providers. Welcome to another episode of the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Cedric Marlow. I am a U.S. Navy vet. Here on the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast, we interview the most successful real estate entrepreneurs, capital raisers in the world, where most have donned the uniforms of our great country. We aim to provide the tool sets, the mindsets, and skill sets for you to achieve your personal and business goals while using real estate as a wealth creation vehicle to help you live a more successful, happy, and fun-filled life. I am super excited today because I have with me Mr. Jeff Flynn, who is a top-notch mobile home park investor. But before I properly introduce our exciting guest to you, I want to ask a favor of you. Please, if you get some type of value out of this interview, if you get some type of insight, mindset shift, if you learn a new skill, receive inspiration or motivation to go out and take some progress in your life, please share this episode with some of your friends. Send it to someone you know who might be or could be interested in real estate. Share it on your social media, post it on your wall, or share it in your stories. Help us spread our message while you help others. And for all of you who share this episode, I want to say thank you. Again, everyone, I have with me Mr. Jeff Flynn. Jeff is the founder and managing partner of Aspen Ridge Capital, where he acquires and operates mobile home parks to create thriving communities and strong investor returns. A Navy veteran, he transitioned into full-time park ownership just days after leaving the service and quickly built a growing portfolio. Passionate about transparency and long-term value, Jeff is currently advancing his expertise through the University of Denver's Real Estate Development Program. He's also a mentor, podcaster, sharing insights to help others understand the power of mobile home park investing. All right, first off, Jeff, welcome.
Thank you. That's a great intro. I've never had an intro that good.
Thank you. So, Jeff, before you became this very successful person I see in front of me, in about 2 to 3 minutes, give our listeners a little bit of your backstory, like where you grew up, how was your upbringing, what in your past shifted your mindset into becoming the person you are today?
Well, I grew up in Oakton, Virginia, which people think of Virginia, they think, this guy's got to have a country accent. Oakton, Virginia is basically Washington, D.C. It's on paper a really good place to grow up, a lot of good jobs, all that kind of stuff. I really just didn't like it. It's an area where I think, too many people are just focused on money. And growing up, I really can't look back to anybody I knew who had a passion or they had some sort of thing that they were working on that they believed in. They're all just job. So I grew up there. I had a lot of good friends, a good upbringing and all that. But as soon as I got the opportunity to pick where I wanted to live, basically leave high school, go to college, I went to Auburn University. So I looked at places all over the Southeast and pretty much picked that because I went down there for a day, and I happened to be touring the campus on a day called A Day, which is the day their football team just scrimmages themselves. Like, I mean, to me, that was, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, they have a scrimmage, whatever. Well, I get down there and there's more cars than I would ever have imagined. The people are tailgating. There's like everybody just, walk by them. They're giving you, they're welcoming you to have some of their food. And I was just like, man, I love this place. I just loved the culture of it, fell in love with it. So now I identify as somebody from Alabama because I feel like that's more of who I really am, but I'm not. But that's kind of how my upbringing went.
Okay, okay, cool, cool. So now, you were in the Navy, as I mentioned in your bio. So can you share a little bit of that journey from, say, leaving the Navy to becoming a full-time mobile home park investor?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I actually started investing in real estate while I was in the Navy, which is probably one of the easier times to get started. Basically, what I did was, like a lot of guys do, we have the VA loan, which at the time when rates were low, you could still actually get something that made sense. But I had been stationed at Buckley in where I live now in Colorado, living on base, as a E4 or whatever I was at the time, just not making a whole lot of money, and then seeing my friends who were just married somebody, while they were in school, and now they're getting to live off base, buy a house. I was starting to get irritated like a lot of people do. So I just stayed patient, and once I finally got the chance to move off base and get BAH, I bought a condo. So I bought a one bed, one bath condo, and it had a loft. I converted the loft to a bedroom, kind of. I just basically put up a half wall, which used to be a railing. I
Hmm.
slept up there, and I rented literally the master bedroom and the one bath to another one of my Navy buddies. But for me, it was so crazy to think of, when I look back to college, I remember hearing people talk about houses for 300,000. I'm like, how do you come up with 300,000? I don't understand that. That first condo I bought, I wasn't making a whole lot of money. I didn't have to come out of pocket. In fact, at closing, because the seller credited me enough with the VA loan, I actually got a $1,500 check at closing. And then I get moved in, and my buddy's paying me 800 a month. My mortgage was 1,100 a month, and I think the BAH was like 1,600 a month or something. So essentially, I was pocketing an extra, 1,200 bucks a month, which was huge. And I just thought, man, this is cool. I've got to learn more and more about real estate. So that's how I got started. And then at the time, I was just, rates were still low, so a lot of stuff worked that doesn't work today. So I literally lived in that condo for 365 days and closed on the second one, um, a year to the day later. It just so happened to work out that way, which there's some logistics to that. I thought I didn't use all my VA loan eligibility. I thought, okay, I'll just buy a second condo. Then realized, well, I'm not being moved for anything, so I can't just do that. And so I had to refinance the first one, and luckily everything was just exploding in price at the time, so I was able to. And then, but that's kind of how I got going with real estate.
Okay, okay. Now, what gave you the idea for that first condo to have your shipmate basically rent from you? Where'd that idea come from?
Well, I started reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I had gotten stationed at Buckley right as COVID hit the country, and I needed my clearance approved to check into my command and actually go and do my job. But the people there's 17 people or something required to sign off, and you know how ridiculous that stuff can get.
Hmm.
And some of them were non-essential workers. So there was a 4 month period where I was at the barracks, basically just sending a text to the chief in the morning saying, "Hey, I'm alive," and then that was it. It was the craziest thing. I always call it my financial freedom test run because it shifted my mindset to be like, I really don't need that much money to be happy.
Hmm.
I just need enough coming in that my bills are paid and I'm good. So I can go do something fun. So that's what kind of got me thinking differently. And I think a friend recommended Rich Dad Poor Dad because he talks about similar things. So started reading about that. Then I started reading all the Bigger Pockets books and just really consumed a lot of information on real estate. And it started to make sense to me like, hey, this is the way to do it, especially as a veteran. I mean, we have such an unbelievable opportunity to get that first one because we don't have to come up with a down payment. And you don't also have to add all that PMI if you do an FHA loan, like you would if you did an FHA loan.
Right, right. Okay, all right. So that second condo, um, was it in the same complex or just you found it out on the market?
No, it was I actually thought about that and I talked to when I was talking to the loan broker, he's like, they're not gonna they're not going to let you buy your neighbor's house. Like, it's not going to happen. I didn't see why not, but like he was just telling me like the VA is not going to go for that. But I bought it. It was a much larger one. It was basically where my wife and I were planning to stay for a longer time. The first
Okay.
one was a true house hack, and after that, I was like, okay, I'm probably going to need to stay in this next one for a while. A year afterwards, that's when I ended up getting out and did decide to move at that point. So I moved to Alabama after that. So I did end up renting it out. But it was across town. It was much nicer. That's another thing I learned quickly. If you're not going to cash flow that much, you're better off going for a nicer place in a nicer area because you have a much higher likelihood of it going up in value. And you get a much better tenant on the back end. So my first condo was in a rougher part of Aurora. It was 170,000 for a one bed, one bath, which is about as cheap as you could probably pull off around here, which was what I was thought was the right move. But that comes with a lot of cons, right? There's a lot of, trouble. There's a lot of police sirens. The next one I moved to was 400,000 for a two bed, two bath, and substantially nicer in a nice area where we just attracted all sorts of tenants. The rent was far higher, and over time, it really hasn't gone up too much in value because we bought it at kind of a low rate peak. But in terms of where I think the area is going, I'm confident over time it's going to continue to appreciate.
Nice, nice. Okay, so you started out in condos. So what first attracted you to mobile home park investing that as an asset class?
Well, I started looking at every asset class. I hear a lot of people talk about it as shiny object syndrome, but to me, if you don't have a rock solid plan of how you're going to get to your goal, it's not shiny object syndrome at that point. It's research. So I read about every asset class. I read about apartments. I read about storage. I read about mobile home parks. I actually didn't really think mobile home parks were for me at first because I'm just like, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to take one of those down. And so I just kept looking into other stuff. I started looking at like fourplexes in Colorado Springs, where it was a little cheaper. I was still just trying to think of how can I use my VA loan. I wasn't really thinking of my own money or other people's money at that point. But the way I actually got into mobile home parks was my brother-in-law had left his construction job and worked at a brokerage firm that only sold mobile home parks. And that's where I was like, that is super interesting. How does he just sell that and make a living? And so I shadowed him for about a week and I was like, okay, I'm doing this. So I got my real estate license while I was still in. At that point, I was pretty much on a night shift and I worked 4 days on, 3 days off, 3 days on, 4 days off. So I actually had a lot of time during the day to work. And so that's what I did. Pretty much my last year, I just worked as a broker during the day and Navy at night and just did that and learned a ton about the industry that way from people who are doing it every day. So I obviously read all the books I could on it, but then very quickly I realized like books only get you about probably 20% there. Then you've got to do the other 30% from people you know. And then the last part, you're just going to have to learn yourself.
Okay. Now, how did those early days as a broker shape the way you invest today and operate?
It was interesting. It was a very interesting time because at one point I would go, talk to all my Navy buddies for our 12-hour shift or 8-hour. Well, it eventually became an 8-hour shift, and we just kind of talk about anything, and they would talk about how they were investing in Bitcoin and stocks and all that other stuff. But it was all more about just like saving money. And then as a broker, I'd get to go talk to investors who are putting together deals in creative ways I never thought possible. And they're not using their money, they're using other people's, which I didn't think was a thing. Um, and so it really shaped my mind. It also made me realize how simple it really is. I mean, people overcomplicate it. They think, oh man, I've got to have this complicated system. I mean, the system as a broker, people always ask me, oh, well, you had access to the MLS. That's how you knew about all these deals. It's like, I've never once used the MLS. It's just, there's the property. Let me call the owner and see if they would be interested in taking a look at an offer. It's really all it is. That's still all I do. And so I think I realized from that, it's not complicated.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of being consistent and, continuing to learn. So you constantly get smarter about how to structure deals and do deals and turn them around. But yeah, it was just interesting to see how simple it really was. It's just not many people know about it.
Okay. Okay. Now, for my listeners who may not be familiar, what makes mobile home parks a unique real estate investment?
Well, I mean, to describe a mobile home park will probably answer a lot of that. And it's
Okay.
basically a community where you buy the entire community, and what you really buy is the land. The houses are typically not yours. Sometimes you'll find a park owner who owns the houses too, the mobile homes themselves. But basically, what you do is you buy a community where you rent out lots to people who own their own house. So the unique part about that, the tenants stay for decades. Like I think the average length of a mobile home tenant is 15 years. So it's not like you're buying somebody who's in and out. You don't have a ton of operations like you might obviously you're in self-storage, so you have a lot more operations and fluctuation. Ours is very steady. There's not a whole lot to really do. And what's unique about them is that there are so many people who own them who aren't really real estate minded people, meaning they just had land 40 years ago and they let people start moving in a home at a time, developed it into this park over, a decade or two. And then after that point, one of the things that happens is they just don't fix anything. They don't change rents at all. And it goes on for decades to the point where nowadays it's, the rents are 30% of where they should be. They can't afford to fix anything. And they're in this position where they're just like, hey, if I increase my rents at all without fixing things, my tenants are going to freak out. But I also can't afford to fix anything because I'm not charging enough. And so they get to a point where they basically back themselves in a corner. They have to sell it. And then as an investor, you're taking a community where you're improving the community. You can get rents up very quickly, and tenants are usually actually pretty happy about it. Obviously, nobody likes paying more,
Right.
but they can't really, they don't want to move their homes. There's nowhere else for those homes to go. They want to see their community get fixed, and they're usually pretty welcoming.
Okay. Yeah. And as you and I were talking before we started recording, I'm somewhat familiar with mobile home park investing, but something you just said there, I've really never thought about when it comes to mobile home park investing. No one wants to move their home.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a misnomer. I mean, people think of them like RV parks. They do show up on trucks. Basically, the reason you have a mobile home is because it can be built in a factory where it's efficient.
Mm-hmm.
They're not really set up, and a lot of them after 20 something years cannot be moved. They might have frame damage or something like that just from the frame being old, but they're really only designed to be moved once. But let's say, for example, I had a park and then right next door, there was a park with some empty lots, and they say, hey, we'll give you a 50% discount on rent. So let's say I'm at 400, they're at 200. Is somebody going to move over there for $200? Well, storage or apartments, maybe you would see that. Even RV parks, you would see that. That mobile home tenant is looking at probably a $10,000 cost to get their house located there, right? They're going to have to pay to have all the electrical disconnected, the plumbing disconnected, their decks taken down, and usually the decks can't be salvaged. You have to skirt those homes with this basically vinyl that goes around it.
Right.
And you do that on the front end, you pay about $4,500 to $5,000 for the mover to actually show up and move it, even if it's 100 yards. And then you got to pay to have all that stuff reconnected. And so it gets to a point where they are homes, really. They're not designed to be moved around from here to there. I mean, you can, but really they're just designed to be built in a factory and delivered and then be somewhat permanent.
Okay. All right. So Jeff, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about mobile home park ownership?
By far is that it's a headache. Right. That's the number one thing I hear people say, like, man, I can't imagine how you deal with the headache. And I always kind of cite the example of a park I bought. It was 44 units. Our first year of ownership, we got 3 maintenance requests total.
Wow.
And you think about it, we maintain the roads, the utility lines, the water lines are the cities up until the water meter. And then it's the tenant's responsibility from the water meter to the home. Really, all we maintain there are roads, the septic. And if the electrical box right at the house, like before it goes into the house, has a problem, we maintain that. So that year we had twice we had a pothole show up that we had to fix, and then we had a septic tank that got backed up. We had to pump and just pump it. Actually, we didn't have to replace the field lines. So that's the number one conception or misconception. And the second one is that it's really hard to collect rent. There's 2 types of parks. There's parks where you actually do own a lot of the houses. That is not necessarily the case there. Like it is kind of it's you basically have like a low end apartment complex at that point, so it's very hard to collect rent.
Mm-hmm.
But when you just rent the land, it's extremely easy to collect rent, and we see that all the time because our price is so affordable in terms of all other types of housing. We are by far and away the cheapest option. There's really not a cheaper option you can go, right? If you already own your house and you can't afford $400 a month to rent the land, there's not another. You can't find anywhere else to live less for $400. And so it's a very stable. I mean, you still have to work like you do with anything to make sure that people pay, but it's such a small amount. It's a lot easier than people think.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So how do you balance creating returns for your investors while also improving the quality of life for your residents?
That's a great question. Normally, a lot of our job is done for us just by the fact that the owner has not kept it up with inflation.
Mm.
And what we're doing a lot of times, like let's say we had a deal where when we bought it, the rents were at 150, the market was around 450, and we really only needed to get to like 300 to be super profitable, be able to refinance and be done. And so typically when we come into a park, right off the bat, there's a ton of stuff we're going to do. Almost always the roads are completely in disrepair. So we've got to totally repave the roads throughout it, or if it's gravel, re-gravel it, or do some other sort of option. So that's probably the biggest CapEx item we'll do is roads. Also landscaping, signage, very simple stuff like that. And then the more difficult part is that a lot of the tenants at that point have let their houses go. And so you have to act as an HOA in a way to kind of get them to fix it.
Okay.
But that takes a lot of finesse because it's not your house. You have a lease that gives you the power to kind of enforce them to do that, but they're also low income tenants. So if you just come in there, just issue everybody a notice that you have to do XYZ, you're going to irritate everybody. So we have a lot of back end stuff where, maybe it's $1,200 for them to skirt the home and it's not skirted. It just looks like crap. Well, we'll give them the money just by paying for the skirting, and then we'll take that $1,200 and just add $100 to their rent for 12 months, right? So we're not making any money off it, but we understand that $1,000 is extremely difficult in a lot of these cases. We budget for it, we put it on there, we collect it back, and we get the place looking nicer like that. But really, what it comes down to is that when these communities get to that point, intuitively, everybody kind of knows this. If you're looking to build a house, you're not going to build a house in a community where everything's falling apart. You're going to build it in a nice community. So
Correct.
what we see happen, those communities where the owners have given up, when we come in and start fixing things, usually our rent spikes a lot in the beginning because we have to get the budget up to fix all these things. We typically don't see an occupancy drop. I think out of 380 lots at this point, I've only ever had one person move out right away. And then after that, we usually see an increase in occupancy where people are actually saying, okay, now they're actually fixing things. Now I'll move in. So people buy their home and they move it in then.
Okay. Now, are you just, do you invest in a geographical area, or you just wherever the best investment area is or criteria?
A little bit of both. So out of 11 parks, 9 are in Alabama. One is in Mississippi, which was an opportunity that came up from a partner. One was in Kentucky. That was an opportunity from a broker. But outside of that, I lived in Alabama for 2 years after the Navy. And going around and meeting the owners in person is how I found most of my deals. So I didn't really pick the area for any sort of market research that I was just super bullish on. It's like, hey, this is where I live. I can find a lot of deals here. And it's close by, so I can go drive out and check on it. And so that's kind of why I focused on Alabama to begin with. But now at this point, our management, it's fairly easy to manage these properties virtually if they're just land rentals. And so we're looking in all states across the Southeast at this point.
We know you're going to like this episode. So please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel so you can be notified when the next episode drops. Okay. Now, where do you see the most opportunity in today's mobile home park market?
There's a lot of opportunity in filling up lots. The industry is getting more and more popular, and it's a very unique industry in that the assets are so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing gets to the market. Absolutely nothing decent ever shows up on Crexy or LoopNet. Because as a broker, and I knew this because I was a broker, if I get 5 bullet points, like how many lots are there, how many have filled, how many are the tenants versus the parks, what's the lot rent, and what are the utilities, I can send that bullet point list to pretty much any buyer worth their salt and they'll have an offer. I don't at that point need, years of financials, years of rent rolls. It's so simple that people can underwrite it. Now they usually do the due diligence after that. So you do see more deals probably blow up because they thought it was this and it wasn't. Um, but from a broker's perspective, you're not going to spend all the time and effort to put together a listing agreement, put it on Crexy, and just answer calls from a bunch of people who are never actually capable or going to buy it. And so you really got to, the opportunity is really in people who are willing to work to go out and find the deals. Otherwise, it's I think personally, next to impossible to actually get a good deal and get started.
Okay. All right. So mainly most of your deals now are coming from brokers, prior relationships. And if that is the case, how do you evaluate that it's a good deal?
To me, when I look at a good deal, I look at it very similarly to a park owner. No, I'm sorry, not a park owner, a home flipper. Like when a
Okay.
home flipper looks at a deal, they're going to say, what's the final value of this thing? What's my cost to improve it? What can I spend on it? That's essentially what I'm doing because a lot of times if we just, some people will look at it from a cap rate where it is right now,
Right.
and they may come up with a value of 1 million, whereas I'm willing to pay 1.5 million for it. And people say, well, why? Well, their rent's at 150, the market is at 550. There's so much we can do to improve it. Usually, like the land value is probably more than the park is worth on an income basis. And so you kind of have to look at it from hey, here's what we're going to do to transform this community. That's what it's going to be worth when it's all done and that's completed. And
Hmm.
so for me, I basically look at it, what's the finished value? 60% of that is where my, total costs need to be between buying it and fixing it. And if we get that, then we can refinance, pull our money out and just keep the deal forever.
Okay. All right. So for somebody out there who may be listening, what are the most critical factors for successfully operating a mobile home park?
One, you have to have really good management. In the beginning, I did not have good management. I'm still paying the price for those deals that I bought when I was beginning, and it was just me and a partner. We didn't really know what we were doing. They're
Hmm.
simple, but it's also if you don't get it down pat, you'll just make problems for yourself. And the properties I've bought since in like the last 2 years, they run like a top because from day one we set the standard with the tenants that this is how we run things. We're professional. Here's how you do things. But in the beginning, we were making exceptions, letting people pay a couple weeks late. Um, and it's just hard to put that back in the bag. As once they know that you will do that, you can't change it. And so we've had, headaches and issues with those first parks, which were not anything to do to the park. It's just being a first time landlord in that type of asset. We just made mistakes. And, that kind of stuff I'm still dealing with. But the biggest thing is really just to get consistent and have really good systems for tracking things and make sure you don't let tenants fall behind because especially in this realm, $400 if they miss it 1 month and now it's 800, that they're probably not going to get back up to that point. And so you have to really, really stay on people. And that's the part I struggle with because I wanted to help people. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. You do that so many times and find out people were just had no intentions of paying you to where you kind of just get hardened as a landlord. You're just like, no, today's the 6th. You had 5 days. It's over.
Okay. So, okay. So in that instant, I can understand, say, like from self-storage, right? You don't pay within a certain amount of days, 30 days, we can auction off everything inside of your unit. Now, what happens when, an eviction, I'll call it an eviction happens there, yeah, that's something unique. Because like you said, most people don't want to get up and move their house, but now you're not paying me. What happens in that instance?
Well, there's two kind of cases here. There's the
Okay.
case where you own the house too, which in the beginning I did a lot of that because I thought it was more cash flow. I could talk for 2 hours about how dumb that was. But the reality is, okay, in those situations, it's like a normal eviction you'd have in an apartment. I've only had to take one of those like fully to court ever. Most of the time, I've just done cash for keys. What's
Okay.
unique about mobile homes is that even if the person trashed it or you just got to get them out of there, I'll pay them, $1,000 to just leave, or maybe not $1,000, but like whatever they're behind, I'll just forgive it, and maybe $500 for a few nights in a hotel to just find another place. But then on the back end, I can just kind of sell the house and recoup it if it's mine.
Right.
In terms of where the tenant owns the house and they're not paying lot rent, I've never had that go to the point of an eviction. Uh,
Okay.
what I've learned is if they are not doing that, one of two things is happening. They've either decided to move and they're just trying to get a couple months of free rent. And when they move, typically what they're going to do is like, they lived in one town, they got a job in another town. They're just going to try to sell the home and then keep the home there, go to another place. So sometimes they'll just try to get away with a couple months rent. So by the time we get to the eviction, they've already sold to somebody else. They're out. So
Oh,
typically when people are behind, we get on the phone with them and just say, hey, we just want to see what your plans are. If you're interested in moving, we don't know if typically in our experience, when people don't pay, they're interested in moving. If you need help having us facilitate the sale of your house, let us know.
okay.
Which is a cool part of it because that's basically what we do. I really don't care, to own the house. And
Right.
if that person's moving, that's life. You got to move. We'll help them sell their house because we get people calling us all day long wanting to move into these things. So we just send them some tenants that we've verified. We don't charge anything for it. We just want to make sure we have a hand in it to make sure it doesn't go to somebody we don't want moving in. We just
Okay.
help facilitate the sale so they get some cash in their pocket, they pay back what they owe, and then they move on. So that's typically how we do it. In the case where they really didn't move, they would have to go to they'd have to get to the point where we would evict them normally, just like they were if they were an apartment resident. 30 days, they got to pay. If they don't, in 30 days, it goes to court, they got to move out. And they'd have to move their home out. So the other thing we do in those cases, sometimes, people will just ask us to pay a cash price for the house. You would think that's tens of thousands. It's usually like anywhere from $500 to $5,000. So we'll pay that for the house. Usually when this is happening, they're one of the lesser quality houses in the neighborhood. So then we'll either fix it up ourselves and then sell it just to get our money back. But we make sure the house stays solid, or we'll sell it to somebody who's a carpenter or some other skilled trade who's going to fix it themselves. And then we have to put all sorts of parameters in place to make sure they actually fix it. So that, again, back to kind of the misconceptions. The choices in that tenant's position, when they actually own their house, they're pretty incentivized to pay. Like if you own your own apartment, you're not paying, who cares? It's not yours. When you've got your house, a 3-bedroom house, and you owe this guy $600, you pay it. Like it's way cheaper to go that route. So that's typically what we see.
Okay. All right. Yeah, makes a lot of sense there. Just pay it because, like you said, it's going to cost me $10,000 plus to move my house if I have to, move it, 10,000 versus 600 or whatever the lot rent is. It's no brainer.
Right.
Yeah. Now, how do you approach challenges like infrastructure issues, tenant turnover, and say regulatory compliance?
Regulatory compliance can be tough when you own the houses. I mean, just in general, like mobile home parks are a very weird gray area.
Hmm.
Perfect example. Sometimes you like I bought a park where I owned all the houses at the time of closing, and I had tenants who were renting it. And each year they needed to get renewed. In that particular city, those units all need to get inspected once a year by the building inspector.
Wow.
Well, they're mobile homes. They're not built like a single family house. So part of their code was physically impossible for us to comply with. Um, and so that's why I'm not a big fan of renting the homes because they're just not designed for that. And so that's one of the bigger issues. Another thing is like a lot of times cities do not want a mobile home in their town, right? Because typically they have a pretty bad reputation for being an eyesore, not having a good tenant base.
Yeah.
I actually just dealt with this on a deal we closed on 2 months ago, where the day I closed, I took the owner out to dinner. He just happened to mention the city just issued him a whole bunch of violations. I was like, great. Um, but typically, what that is like the owner getting very lazy and just not doing the basics. So I just took the initiative, called the city, and said, "Hey, I just bought this. I understand you just gave him like a week to clean these up. I have a plan to do way more than just get to your standard. I have a standard I think is far higher, but I do need time to get this all figured out because we just closed." And they're like, "Yeah, perfect." We were just happy someone even called us because we couldn't get the old guy to call us. So it's really just a matter of like once the city is on the side of knowing that you care,
Yes.
it's a lot easier. I did make mistakes in the beginning when I was trying to fix homes. What I found is like the city standard for what they take a mobile home to. I mean, you really can't depending on the city, you really can't just do a few $1,000s of repairs to get it there. You're
Mhm.
basically looking at like a total replacement. And I just spent too long trying to kind of fight with the city just to get them to like look the other way, not look the other way, but like understand that this is not, I can't do what you said. Like I'm not replacing every door because the door has to be a certain length because this is just how it was built.
Right.
Um, and so after like over time, I've just learned like, hey, just buy parks where the homes aren't yours. It's a million times easier.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's the one thing, regardless of what real estate asset class that you're in or that you're investing in, that regulatory compliance always rears its head at some point, you know,
Mm.
and you just have to work through it and work with the municipality to try to, uh, you know, make a win-win for both sides, basically. Yeah,
Yeah. And once the city knows you care, like that really does change your outlook on things. I mean, because the people think of compliance as just adhering to the rules, but I mean, the way a lot of the building codes and rules get enforced in these cities, if they really wanted to, I don't care what your asset is, the city could probably throw the book at you if they really start to get irritated with you.
absolutely.
And they can say, "Oh, well, this parking spot's not wide enough. This isn't a like." If they really want to, they probably could because of just how rigorous those codes are, especially in mobile home parks. And so it really comes down to the fact that like if they know you'll deal with serious issues, because really that's what cities want. They want to make sure it's clean. They want to make sure it's safe. We had a case where the tenant didn't tell us anything. They just went to the city and the health department and told us that we had a massive sewer leak. And the building inspector called me right away. He's like, "Hey, I just want to let you know they just called about this. Do you know about this?" I'm like, "No." And I sent him all of our records of like our communications with this tenant. They never texted us, never called us, never submitted a maintenance request. And he's known me for a while enough to know like, okay, this tenant's probably just trying to, you know, get them in trouble or something. And I don't know why she was paying on time, but come to
Mhm.
find out, she had taken a Sawzall to her own septic or her own sewer line just to let it leak. I don't even know why. I still can't answer that to this day. Um, but it's one of those things where if the city wanted to, they could say, okay, you've got this cleanup fee, blah, blah, blah. You got to do this now. And if it's a law, I got to do it. I can't really disagree with it. But the
Mhm.
city understood like this doesn't seem like the character of what they're doing over there. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And really, that's all you need. If the city gives you the benefit of the doubt, you'll be fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now, can you walk us through a value add strategy you've implemented and that significantly improved the park's performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first park I actually ever bought is a perfect example of this. It was when we bought it, it was 35 total lots, but there were only 29 houses there. And the roads had not been paved since they were initially built 30 years ago.
Wow.
So when I got the quote, the guy was actually joking if I'd found any fossils because you could see potholes where you see different layers of different types of dirt. They were that deep. And so when we bought it, like I mean, at $150, what was he at? $165 a month. You can't if you broke out like the routine maintenance of a septic tank, it doesn't even cover that. And so what we were faced with was basically the situation where like, okay, rents are really low, market's way higher. This park needs a ton of work. So we repaved the entire road front to back. We installed brand new landscaping at the front, new signage, and then we outside of that, which was about 50 grand, sorry, 60 grand for the road and about another 10 grand in landscaping. We had dumpsters there on site for a while. We got made sure every tenant got their yard cleaned up. And then we just got on some of the worst houses about fixing things up. And we kind of, if they needed skirting, we paid for it, bill them back. Um, and what we saw was in 90 days, our occupancy increased. We had three brand new homes move in. So we went from $165 a month to $265 a month on the tenants that were there, which people are like, wow, that's a huge increase percentage wise, which is what I always hear from the multifamily side. Like you can't, but it's like, it's $265 a month. It is unbelievably affordable for all of your housing, especially when we cover the sewer bills too. So we did that. And then what we immediately saw was new homes moving into the park at $400 a month. So our
Uh,
occupancy actually spiked for the exact same reason. Like there's two parks in the town. This was one of them. People just weren't moving in because nothing was getting fixed. As soon as we fixed it, that's when people were like, okay, let's move in. So we had a couple of homes move in, and by the end of the year, we were full. So we're at 35 lots. So we continued to just kind of maintain it, get it better. In the second year, we were actually able to refinance it because the value had gone from 600 to about 1.2. We pulled our money out and just planned to hold it really forever.
Nice, nice. So you just mentioned you guys paid the sewer bill. Now, do you guys bill back to your tenants any of that, or how
Well,
does
that
that?
one's septic. So that we do
Okay,
have probably half my portfolios on septic, which I
okay,
actually prefer at this point. I know it sounds crazy, but I just
yeah,
don't like. I think it's actually better. Um, there's just no way to bill for it. I mean, the tenants pay their water directly to the city, so we're not involved with their water. We're not involved with their power. So whatever the septic usage is, we don't calculate. Because anytime you do get a sewer bill, they're just taking your water bill and making it a sewer bill.
okay, gotcha, gotcha. So many of my listeners are passive investors. What should they know before investing in a mobile home park syndication?
Well, a lot of them can be really, really long term. You don't see that a lot in other asset classes because the typical value add strategies buy, boost value, do lots of renovations, sell at year five. That
Yes.
year five kind of gives you your 15% IRR. My IRR on deals I do is usually far lower than 15% because we don't sell it, right? We go into it, we refinance, return money, and then we keep it. So it's really, really long term. Like it could be 50 years if we wanted to. But we get money back quickly. That's kind of what I think how a lot of mobile home park investors do it because they're not making any brand new mobile home parks. And so what's out there is being gobbled up. So if they can get their hands on one, they just want to keep it. And so that's one thing I would pay attention to. They're very liquid. Most of the time, they're very long term. The other thing is that the depreciation you can get on mobile home parks is far better than pretty much every asset class outside of gas stations.
Okay.
Um, which is important to make sure that you're careful on if the plan is to sell it, you've got to be cautious as a passive investor. Like, what kind of tax am I going to owe on the back end? And I get
Hmm.
that question a lot from investors like, hey, why don't we sell? Well, we wrote off 70% of the property's value in year one. If we sell, I'm going to owe a lot of money to the IRS. It's probably going to equal about 25 to 27% of the sale price. I'd rather just get a 65% loan, keep a small amount of equity in there, not have to pay any taxes on it. Right. That's kind of my approach to things. So
Okay.
looking at the depreciation, looking at what the plan is, because I know some people are like, well, they're not really going to hold it forever. Like, yeah, they'll really hold it forever. Like park owners will hold properties for a very, very long time.
Okay. All right. You had mentioned something a little earlier with that specific tenant with the sewer issue that made the call on you, and you said you showed them the communication. So, what type of systems are you guys utilizing so that that communication is captured and you'd be able to flush it out like that?
Well, we use Ring Central, which is a internet based. I mean, some people use Grasshopper or other things like that for like an internet based phone number. So I can log in and call, and my assistant can log in and call, or the property manager can log in and call. But it tracks every call we get. And a while back, I set up an automation that every call that number gets logged, and it's the job of whoever answered the phone. They transcribe it, but like it has AI that transcribes the call. We
Okay.
save the notes. So we have records of every call because I had an unbelievable amount of problems when I got started. You know, I would talk to the tenant once when I was driving through, which I've learned now I never go to the properties, you know, at least in the same car twice because tenants will just tell me things in person. And then they tell the manager, well, Jeff told me I didn't have to do that. And then they're like, well, that's my boss. Did he really say that? And then it just screws things up. But we track every call that way. But outside of that automation, I mean, if we just wanted to look at that tenant's, we just search the tenant's phone number in our system and it shows all the calls that we've made
Okay.
or the texts. We can look back at all the texts and all of our maintenance requests and we can show that, hey, this person, we have called them 3 times, they didn't answer. They haven't called us back.
Okay.
And so that has come in handy way more than I would have thought. And so we really try to make sure that we track that all now.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. That comes in handy sometimes. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So now, has your enrollment in the University of Denver's real estate development program impacted your strategy or outlook?
It has. It has. So I'm studying real estate development because when I look forward 10 years, I don't
Hmm.
think there's going to be any mobile home parks to buy like we're buying now. Like all the mom and pops would have sold. They're going to be other people's. Um, and new mobile home parks are not built. I think at any point in time, there's less than 20 in the country
Hmm.
that are under construction. And if you look at how many are getting destroyed and turned into apartment complexes, or in case of my hometown of Bucky's, used to be like 150 lot mobile home parks, now a gas station.
Yeah.
Um, that's the supply is shrinking dramatically. And for 30 something years, it really has not been the case that you could afford to build these parks. It's really two parts, regulation and the economic cost. But what I've learned through that process is like, hey, how do developers think? Because there really isn't any muscle memory in the mobile home park space for people who buy parks but also develop things. One of
Hmm.
the biggest things I've learned is how developers think that, in the apartment space, for example, like you're in, if it's cheaper to build an apartment than it is to buy what's on the market, people are going to start building.
Yep.
When it gets cheaper to buy it, they're going to stop building. They're just going to be buying. And that's kind of, they kind of shuffle between those two things as the cycle goes. Well, nobody in the mobile home park thinks that way. And so, perfect example, I saw a park sell and I was looking at the price the guy was paying. And it wasn't like it was in the middle of a city, it was in a county. And this is the kind of county you probably could get it permitted to build one. He was looking at about $85,000 per unit for what he was paying for it. Material and land, you'd probably be about 40,000 per lot. So that is something I've learned to look out as like, hey, what is the replacement cost of doing this? Even if it's not logistically possible to build in this town, how much past like what this is really is, which is just a land with some utilities, am I paying for it? That makes me super nervous if I'm start pay really more than like 10 or 20% above replacement cost because there is a value to being full and done and all that.
Right.
But that's something I've learned to think of like a developer, which made me pass on deals I probably wouldn't have. I probably would have gone after them. But I think at some point there's got to be a ceiling to where cities change their mind and do start letting these things get built. And then those guys might be in trouble, might not, but I don't want to find out.
Understood. Understood. Now, is there any lessons from your military service that have been most valuable in building and leading Aspen?
I'd say one is two-person integrity. Um, I'm a very small operation. Even today, it's basically me and an assistant who manage everything.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of things, we wear a lot of hats. I'm trying to change that, but for important tasks, you have to have two people on it. And they have to do it independently to make sure that the chances of it being messed up or forgotten about or done incorrectly is much lower. So that's
Hmm.
one thing I've definitely taken. Attention to detail is another thing. It's just so important, especially when you start buying properties. You can miss one little thing. For example, I just bought a park in a city where I've never encountered this before, but the city requires all mobile home parks to have a business license for how many lots they have. So even if you have 50 lots and there's 50 homes there, if your business license is 30, if somebody moves out, they're not going to let you move in a new person because you're exceeding your business license. Makes no sense. But
Wow.
if I didn't go and talk to the city and go through all the details, I wouldn't have known that. And this one happened to be fine, but and it's all the parks are typically fine, but there's a handful of exceptions where they have more than they're licensed for. And then lastly, I would just say patience. Like the military, I mean, shoot, your first day at MEPS, you're like, oh my gosh, how much waiting am I gonna have to do here? And that's what real estate is. It is instant. It is not instant. It's delayed gratification.
Yes.
Like it's just work, work, work. And really, I mean, even to this day, I've seen almost nothing from it financially. It's all just building for the future. And I think military people have a unique advantage. And I credit a lot of what I've been able to do just from the fact that I did not make a lot of money. I was not one of these guys making 200,000 a year at a job who spend a ton of money and couldn't leave that. I'm just trying to get a few $1,000s a month so I can live off of it. And that's what has allowed me to continuously pursue this, even when it gets tough. And
Right.
like, even just like 2 weeks ago, I'm like, I'm just going to give up. Like, why do I keep doing this? But it's all just about, hey, look down the line 10 years. That's when it's all going to pay off big time.
Okay. Okay. A question just popped in my mind. So you live in Denver or the Denver area. Um, do your mobile home parks have managers?
I used to. So I used to have an on-site manager at each park. I've gone away from that now.
Okay.
And we have an on-site photographer. Reason being, the on-site managers, power went to their head. Perfect military analogy. Somebody gets chief for the first time, and then the next day you see them, they're not the same person. Now they're, big bad chiefs are gonna. Not everybody does that. Most chiefs are really cool, but a lot of them will just be a totally different person. It just goes to their head. Same thing would go to the managers. They would be getting on people that were like that they just don't like,
Right.
and it was just too much drama.
Okay.
So we don't have the managers do anything collections related. All of it, if tenants want to pay, they can pay online or they can mail checks to a PO box that we have that automatically processes it. So I don't need them to do that. We can do that all on the back end. I want somebody on there to basically go through the park, send me pictures of the lots, make sure they're cutting their grass and doing that, and that's it.
Okay.
So there are like onesie twosie stuff that comes up that it's nice to have those people on call, but we don't have on-site managers anymore at most of them.
Okay.
Some of them, like I hired a third party to manage some of them, and they have on-site managers, but they pretty much do what I talked about. They basically just issue notices and kind of report back on the condition of things.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know, like in self-storage, remote management is pretty much the norm at this
Right.
point.
Right.
Not unless you have a bigger facility that can withstand having a manager there and incorporating that into your expenses. So, okay.
Right.
Yeah. Wow, Jeff. Man, time has flown, and I could literally talk to you all day about this mobile home park because, as I mentioned to you before, you're definitely the first person that I've interviewed, with the mobile home park experience. But before I let you get out of here, what's in the future for Aspen Ridge Capital?
Well, we're going to be launching a fund in 2026. So to date, we've done 11 mobile home parks, mostly as one, either myself and a partner or as one-off syndications. But in 2026, we're going to be launching a fund where we're basically going to just do our business plan that we've proven over almost a dozen parks now and just keep doing it. And so if people are interested in that, definitely go to my website, aspenridge.capital, or send me an email, which is jeff@aspenridge.capital. Or if you're just interested in learning about it, you have no interest in investing with me or anything like that, you can go to my YouTube channel. I'm personally a big believer that a rising tide raises all boats. And I think the biggest detriment to the mobile home park industry is people who do it incorrectly. And so I'm trying to constantly share what has worked for me and what hasn't worked for me on my YouTube channel, and pretty in-depth videos to basically explain why I did or why something did or didn't work. So if you're interested in learning more, you can definitely go there.
Awesome. Awesome. Again, I want to thank you for your time today and all the wisdom you have provided to my listeners. It's greatly appreciated. And I want to thank you, our fans, for tuning into the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast, where we want to add value to you in your investing business. Please tune into our next episode, where we will interview another fantastic investing professional. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Service to Syndication Podcast. We want you to know that we love and appreciate your support, and we are grateful about being a part of your journey to becoming a successful real estate entrepreneur. Please share this episode with a friend who you think will get a lot out of what you just heard. Send it to someone who you know is interested in real estate and dreams of having it all and being the best they can be in all areas of life. And if this was really valuable, share it on your social media stories and timelines. Thank you for watching and listening. Now go be great.